Right, welcome to this 8th video, looking at how to format a really long document like an academic dissertation or a thesis. If you haven't yet watched the previous videos, they're all in the same playlist. I recommend you go back and have a look at them because I will assume in this video that you all know all about content from those previous videos. And that included things like styles, formatting both of fonts and paragraphs, and most importantly for this particular video, video 7, which talked about sections. On the screen, you can see I have my dummy thesis. And just to locate where we are, you can see in the corner here that it's got 29 pages. I can see the word count, but I can't see what's really going on yet in terms of the formatting. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my home ribbon, and I'm going to click on that tilde button in the paragraph section to show my formatting. And straight away, I can see that there is a page break, that I'm using styles. If I look here, that's the title style. If I expand the title ribbon, in fact, I'm going to open my styles pane, and I can have a look, see what's going on. And I think to myself, yes, this is a well-formatted document. It's using styles appropriately. It's not full of carriage returns going like this to make space, because we know from previous videos that that's something that creates problems down the line when those carriage returns shift around and throw all my formatting out. But I scroll down, see, oh, I've got an abstract there, it's formatted normal. And then I start to see, okay, I don't just have normal page breaks. In fact, I also have section breaks. Scroll down a little bit more, and indeed I am using headings, and I can see that there is some page numbering that I've inserted from video 7. We're going to pay a little bit more attention to that in this video because today we're focusing on headers and footers. In order to just get my bearings a little bit more around what's happening in my document, I'm going to go to my View ribbon across the top of my screen, and I'm going to tick Navigation pane so that I can see what is going on in my document. I can see that I have a few chapters, a conclusion, and some references that have been formatted with my heading styles, but I can't yet see what's happening with headers and footers. So how to have a look at headers and footers? There is a couple of ways you can do this. The more orthodox way, but it's slower, is to go Insert, and then you'll see there's a whole bunch of different things you can actually add to your document. You'll see that we have a special section called headers and footers and page numbers. You get a few more options if you click down on header, but what they're really giving you is basically just some templates you could draw from. They give you a link to go and find some even more on the internet. They offer you to edit the header or to remove it. You'll get a very similar set of options with the footer drop-down menu. So if you want to add a header and footer, you just go Edit, and you'll see that the main text of the document goes grey, and what is in focus now are the strips across the top and the bottom of the page, where you would type some text that would occur on every page in that section, or across multiple sections if you link your sections together. Remember from video 7. I'll close my styles for now, just to give myself a bit more screen space. What I can see here is that I have 12 sections, 13 sections. There's actually quite a few different sections happening here. And if you recall from video 7, each new section you generate when you insert a section break copies the formatting from the previous section and keeps a link to that previous section, which is what this same as previous means. So if I've only got one section in my document by default, when I start, as soon as I insert a section break, section 2 automatically copies the header and footer and page numbers from section 1, and will continue to copy them until I break that link if I want to. I'm going to show you now why you might want to, and there'll be times you want to, and there'll be times you won't, because remember that a section does not necessarily correspond with a chapter in your document. If you have halfway through a chapter a landscape page, or you have a section where you have a different column formatting to the rest of the document. One chapter could have multiple sections inside, but you wouldn't want to have different headers and footers within the same chapter. Okay, so let's just think about what we can do with these headers and footers. I'm going to go to my introduction, and I'm going to imagine that I have, not uncommon, a quite aged supervisor or even more aged examiner. As academic work becomes more and more intense, the people who are available to externally examine master's and PhD documents are increasingly retired academics with bad eyes and not being fans of reading on the screen. So imagine that the reader of your document might print it out. Straight away, you think to yourself, what if they don't staple it, or what if they can't staple it because it's 300 pages, and who's going to go to the bookbinders or to the reprographics shop to go and get this thing punched and given a spine and all that jazz? Probably not. So just imagine what might happen if the different pages of the document were to be separated. You ideally want anyone to be able to pick up any page that's come loose and identify where it should go and what document it belongs to. And so what I like to do on the top of every page of my paper, essay, dissertation, you name it, is to put the title so that the person can remember what document they are indeed reading. If you go back to, I think it was video 4 or 5, we also used tab stops, and the tab stops are incredibly helpful in the header and footer. Have a look at my ruler. You can see that my normal text starts at the edge of the left margin, but I have a center tab stop in the middle of the page. There you go, center tab. And I have a right tab stop at the edge of the page. In fact, it's ever so slightly off if you look. But it's going to do the job just fine, because if I click on that right tab, you can see it aligns. Look at that rule, that straight line going vertically down the page. It aligns with the right edge of the text in the main body, and that's what looks visually pleasing. It's when the text all lines up. So that's what you really want to look for. So I'm going to say the title of the thesis goes here, and author of the thesis goes here. And that is going to occur at the top of every page. So it doesn't matter which page you pick up, you know which document this is and who wrote it. Now, just like with the main text in my document, I want this to look neat and tidy. In this particular case, you can go, as you would for any other piece of text in the document, styles. Look at that, we actually have a special header style. And you might go, okay, I want my header to be slightly smaller. I'm going to make it size 10 so that it's not too obtrusive. And one of my favorite things to do on a header is to add a border. It's a format border, and you get this borders and shading dialog. You can access this through the paragraph formatting section on the main home ribbon as well. And there are different things you can do with this, but for an academic document, I really don't recommend that you go crazy. You don't want it to look unprofessional. All we want to do is keep a nice clean black line, quite fine, half point. Automatic color will give me black. Don't want shadows. I don't want 3D. I don't want anything that looks like I'm playing around and being silly rather than being neat and professional. And on the preview, you can see we've got these 4 buttons which allow me to draw a particular edge or border around the paragraph. So you can see that that button gives me the top edge, that button gives me the left edge, the right edge. So you can literally pick which borders of the paragraph you want to actually be drawn on the screen. And for the header, I like to do the bottom edge because it creates a nice, neat visual line that separates header text from the main body text. So I'm going to just choose the bottom border, apply it to the paragraph. Okay. And that's my header style. I'm going to go, okay. And there we go. I just turn off formatting so you can see there, and I exit the header space. Doesn't that look neat and tidy? Okay, there's the title, there's the author, but more importantly, you can see it is on every single page. If I go back into my header, much faster way, which is by just double clicking on that space, you can see it says same as previous. And I think to myself, okay, that's all right, because yes, I want the same header throughout the entire document. But maybe there are some section-specific parts that I would like to have. Say, what chapter is the reader currently reading? And then, of course, the page numbers might shift as well. We already saw in the last video, but we'll look at it again, how I can have different page numbers for my preamble material, the main body of my text. And today I'll show you, we'll do it for the references as well. So if I go back to the top of my document, we can see here's my front page. And one of the nice things about headers and footers is that you can say, give me a different first page. Generally, you don't want the first page to have a header and a footer, because you already should have the title there and the information about the author, etc. So it's sort of duplicate information, it's repetitious, and it's also visually cluttering on what should be a really nice first page. Now you can see that because I have the header, that's an interesting problem. We'll have a look at that in a moment. Because I have the header style applied, it has given me a bottom border. Indeed, I don't want that. So I'm just going to edit this one specifically. I'm going to go, don't change the style. I'm going to just change this one alone because I want this one to be different. There on my paragraph, you can see the bottom border is enabled. I'm going to go, no border on this one, please. But you can see it has not eliminated the border on the next page. Why? Because on my header and footer menu, I said a different first page. So I don't want a header or footer on my first page. I want a nice, clean, visually uncluttered first page. So you see, this is the first page of the header, section 1. First page of the footer of section 1. Now, here's a nice little diagnostic error that may come up quite frequently. Over here, we can see that my left tab stop, or my right tab stop, should I say, is misaligned. And the reason why is because we have different margins on this preamble material as compared to the margins on the main text. Can you see this here has much wider margins than this section does? One of two options. Either I can make the margins match, in which case my tab stops in the right place, or I can go, I don't want to, I want to have these narrower margins, so I want to change the header for the first section. Let's do the second option, just to show you this linking and delinking story. At the moment, section 1, section 2, all the way through to section 12 have the same header, because here's my link. Section 2 says, give me the same as previous. But first thing I want to do before I change the header for section 1 is I wanted to delink section 2, because if I change section 1, well, the change is going to cascade through the entire document. This is almost the reverse logic of what we were doing with styles. With styles, we want the changes to cascade through the whole document. With a delinked specialized header and footer that only applies to one section, we don't. And so we break the link. Sections 2, 3, 4, all the way to 12 will still be connected together, but I'm going to break the link between section 1 and section 2 because section 1 is the preamble, margins, got a different look and feel, it's got a different page number. I want it to be cut off from the rest of the document so that I can play with it without changing everything everywhere else. Have a look on my header and footer menu. It says link to previous. I'm going to turn that off. Now can you see how that previous has disappeared? It still has the header text that was there before, but now, unlike before, if I change the header in section 1, it will not cascade to sections 2 to 12. If I go to section 3, you can see section 3, in fact, is probably a small section inside a page because we have, you see, there we go. Section 3 is where we have the 2 columns. Here's section 4, same as previous. So section 2 and 4 still connected. Section 3 is buried inside a page, and so it doesn't have its own unique header and footer. Section 5, let's go find it. Here we go. Same as previous. I haven't broken any of the other links. The only section that has been broken off is section 1. I go back to my section 1 header and I go, you know what? I am going to make that text line up a little bit more neatly, please. Paragraph, tabs. There you go. My tab's in the wrong place. I'm going to clear that tab. In fact, I'm going to clear that one too. And it looks to me like I should be more or less in the sort of 17.25 range if I look at my ruler. So I'm going to put a right tab stop with no leader at 17.25, set it. Okay. There, can you see now where the right tab stop has gone? And I deleted the center tab. So now I don't need 2 tab movements anymore in between the left and the right. I only need 1. A single tab jumps me straight from the left margin to my first tab stop on the right margin. It does not pass through a center tab. So I do not need to go tab, tab. 1 tab will do the trick just fine. And doesn't that look quite nice? Now, my first section header lines up with my first section margins. But if I go to my second section, that one hasn't changed. Why? Because I delinked them. Okay, so there's a couple of really important ideas here. We've talked about delinking. We've talked about editing a header. We've talked about using our tabs to get our text in our header to line up with the edges of our document really nicely. We've also talked about borders to make a nice clean line to visually separate header text from the rest of the body. And we've seen that indeed, like all text in the document, headers use styles. So I am editing my explicit header style when I want to change the header throughout the entire document, but I am editing it within a section when I only want to change it for that section. Let's go to footers. Now I might go, great. I want to have a different footer in every section. It's a bit extreme. I mean, probably you wouldn't do this, but you could. You do it exactly the same way. And what you do is go, okay, I want to say, yes, thank you very much. This is my page number. You can do insert page number and choose where you want it. Like before, you can use tab stops to get there. In fact, in order to do that, I need to go in front of that page number that was already inserted by Microsoft Word in this case, and tab before it because I'm already at the right-hand side tab and I want to go to the center and then to the left. So I might go here. This is introduction. You could also put a border on it if you want to, just to show you what that might look like. You might decide this is too much. You might decide you like the clean visual sparseness of just a page number, but I'm going to put a top border there. And I can also see that this is quite large. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to go, where's my footer? Oh, there's my footer style. What if I don't want it size 12? It's very, very big. It's all based on normal. I'm going to make that a size 10. Thank you very much. And technically, if I want to have a border on all of my footers, I should have, I should have applied it via the style. not manually. Ah, there we go. Right. Now it's going to be everywhere. Chapter 5. Yes, indeed. But it says introduction. Hang on. I shouldn't be saying introduction in chapter 5. I should be saying 5. So what would we do? You've guessed it. We would need to delink. So chapter 1. There's the introduction. Let's have a look here. All right. Open up my header and footer by double clicking. It says same as previous. Same as previous. I'm going to go, okay. Link to previous. Can you see how the links between the headers and the links between the footers are distinct? The header can still be same as previous. I can continue the connections through the document on the headers while disconnecting the footers. So the footer in section 5 should actually say chapter 1. Headers connected, the footer is severed. That sounds quite grim, doesn't it? All right, chapter 1, chapter 1. I'm going to go scrolling down. There's chapter 2. Don't want that. I click in the footer of chapter 2, say delink. Chapter 2. Now, I want my page number to continue from chapter 1. Obviously, I don't want that connection severed. But because these are what we call fields, they are auto-populated text that is calculated by the word processing software. That's not a problem. I can click on that field that is counting, and I can say update field, toggle field, format page numbers, but it is going to keep, if I wanted to break it and go, all right, I want to have a new page number for each chapter, then you could say start at 1, but I don't. I'm just going to say continue from previous section. So I can disconnect the formatting of the footer without disconnecting the page number count, and that's really useful. So chapter 2, I wanted to say chapter 2. On we go. You can imagine here we write. In this section, I'm not, in fact, there we are, chapter 2, chapter 3. Well, that one's out of date. Why? The footer is connected. Sever the footer. Thank you very much. Make that chapter 3. Doesn't matter that it's section 7. Remember, sections and chapters do not align. The reason this is section 7 is because I've had things like columns. I've had things like, there's a page in here that might be landscape that use, there you go. So there's a few section breaks in there that is bumping up the incremental count of the sections, but it's within a chapter. All right, so this is clearly, shouldn't be chapter 1. This should be chapter, let's go back here. Chapter 3. Good, chapter 3, lovely. And so I would continue throughout my document, go down to chapter 4. I can see here that I need to update this one. Delink, say chapter 4. Here we go. Here we have, again, chapter 4 now. This is an interesting one because we have a landscape document. And here we would have to delink. We'd make sure first we've got chapter 4 all the way throughout. And then we would have to delink section 9's header and footer, because being a landscape page stuck in the middle of a portrait document, of course, the tab stops are very, very, very wrong. I'll come back and clean that up in a minute. That's the sort of thing I recommend you only do when you've absolutely finished your document and you're putting final touches. But here, chapter 5, okay, give me the footer, delink. Chapter 5, thank you very much. Header's still copying, that's very nice. And then over here, conclusion. This is not chapter 5. This is conclusion. And so what I've done, which is quite extreme, but hey, you know, you do you, is each of my chapters, it has different footers. that tell you where in the document you are. My last section is my references. And again, I have a tab stop problem because the margins are much finer. I'm going to delink the header. I'm going to shift my tab stops. I'm going to get rid of that center tab just to show you again what we did with the preamble material. Clear all, don't want those. I'm going to add one right tab stop at what looks like it should be, looking at my ruler, 18.5 centimeters in this metric system I have set. Okay, well, that looks a lot more tidy, does not? And for my footer of my references, it's kind of obvious. It's kind of obvious when you are in the references. You don't need to know, well, where am I in the document? So I'm going to delink this one as well. I'm going to remove the specification about where you are in the document. And I am going to change the page number format. I'm going to say, start at 1 again and make these letters. Well, thank you very much. So only for my references and references only, it's going to go A, B, C, D, etc. And that's all that you'll see. And in fact, even for my references, no, I'm actually not going to take away my border on my footer. I quite like it. It looks consistent. Can you see how each section has got a similar look and feel, but the header and footer conform with the margins of that section? I'm using tab stops to align the text neatly. I'm picking and choosing how I want to format my page numbers for different subsections of my document. So I want front and back material to have different page numbers to my core body of my document. The last thing to show you in this video before we wrap up is what to do about that very squiffy landscape page that's sitting somewhere in the middle of chapter 4 with a big flat table on it. And we put it in landscape in the last video because when you've got a very wide table, landscape can make it easier to read for your reader. And it's a kind of page as well that might get pulled out to be looked at from a different angle. So we definitely don't want to scrap the header and footer, but we do need to tweak them to make them look tidy. And that means we're going to have to break the links here for both the header and the footer. We'll keep the text. We need to change the tab stops, nothing you haven't seen before. Home, paragraph, tabs, clear the existing ones. I don't have a center tab stop, so I'm going to go, just give me one on the right. At this point, it looks almost like about 24 point grams. What is that? Let's have a look. 24.6 or thereabouts. Let's set that. It's a little bit of an overshoot compared to the table. All right, let's go back and edit that again. Oh, and also I can just delete one of the tabs. Remember, I had 2 tabs. I've overshot that a little. All right, let's go back and shift that. Clear, let's go for 24.5. Set. Still a little over the mark. All right, so I've actually just shifted it using the ruler and using that vertical line just to see what makes the text line up with the edge of the table, although but what it does look like is that the table is not actually lined up with the edge of the margin of the document. So what that tells me is actually I want the text to line up with the edge of that border, because can you see you've got an overhanging border there? That looks terrible. Let's go back to the tabs. This text is not the problem. The problem is the table. All right, that looks a little bit better. Same thing here. Tabs. Clear the center tab. Clear that one as well. Same 24.5. Right aligned. Set it. Okay. Delete the extra tab. That looks fine. Okay. Close header and footer. if we go back to chapter 4 and have a look at that page, that looks a lot tidier. Can you see how I have aligned? Interesting that this particular text here as well is a little bit of a overhang in the front there. Wondering what that is. Not sure what's going on there. I'll have a look at that off screen. But what mistake did I make? I delinked section 9. I didn't delink section 10 from section 9. All right, what would you do in this case? I would undo the changes you've made. Just undoing for now. There we go. Because what happened was I shifted it for the landscape, but then it cascaded back onto the portrait pages that followed. So don't forget to delink both the section before and the section after. I forgot to do that. Here we go. Delink. Now I can start faffing around with the landscape page, and it's not going to cascade all over the show. Let me just quickly reapply those changes I just made there. Clear all, it was 24.5, right, set, okay, get rid of the extra tab. Very nice. Same story here, delete the extra tab. Nice that you can actually see me repeating to do this and also making mistakes, because that's sometimes what happens. Okay, good. Now, this problem of this table looking a little bit there is not a function of the header and footer. I'll tell you how I know why. I type text from left to right underneath the table. Let's write some text here that goes margin to margin. So we can see that the margin of the page and the table are what doesn't line up, rather than the text itself. So you can see that my text here goes a little bit past the edge of the table. It goes exactly up to the margin of the page. So this would be the problem. And if you want that to look really neat, you drag the table edge over to line up rather than shifting the header. Nice way to show diagnostics about where things don't line up. That clean right margin is, of course, also a function of me being a fan of justified text, but I just think it looks so much tidier when you keep things properly neat and tidy like that. Just to show you a real thesis that was absolutely formatted exactly the same way. Different picture here. Excuse the document recovery. All right, so this is my own PhD thesis. If we zoom right out, what's happening with my view? That, oh, it's let's have a look here, multiple pages. That'll do just fine. There we go. So I went view, zoom, multiple pages at once. So now you can see portrait, portrait, portrait. Different first page, no header, no footer. But on page 2, there you go. There's my header, title, author. It's how I like it. I'm keeping the footer clean with just a Roman numeral page count. Very nice. I go all the way through what I'll show you in the next document. You can see table of contents, auto-generated, goes all the way up to page 288, and then the references start with Roman numerals again. List of figures and tables. I'm going to show you how to generate those as well. Keywords, few conventions. So that's all my front material. And then I start on the introduction. And then restart my pages. I scroll all the way down. Remember, I can collapse headings based on my navigation page. So important to style with headings so that you can do this. Also, so you can auto-generate these fields that I will show you in video 9. But if I go to summary, got a few tables here. And indeed, there is a landscape page for a very wide table. So yes, I mean, actually doing a thesis like this does help. It does help to keep things looking professional and clean. Also to help, because yeah, I did have chapter-specific footers in this document, although I didn't add it on this page. That's quite interesting. But there you go, chapter 8. Where is this person in this behemoth of a document? It's 300 pages in the main text. When you add the appendices, it ends up being, if you look here, 335 pages and then some. Very useful for a person who needed to print it out. And yes, one of my examiners needed to print it out to be able to reassemble this if the wind blows it off her desk or the dog runs over it, etc., etc. And headers and footers are really important for that. Great, that's the end of this video. I hope you found that useful. Next video, we will look at that auto-generation of the table of contents and the table of figures and the very strangely named table of authorities. Catch you in the next one.